What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video has been anticipated for a long time. I can't explain how long people have been asking me to make a build video, but we're finally here today and we're going to be doing it. Before we get into it, I want to kind of just go over a few things, give you guys some reasons why I fly KISS, how long I've flown KISS, if I've tried beta flight, some things I like about it, some things I hate about it, kind of yada yada, all that. If you don't want to hear that part, kind of skip through. I'm going to have the little tags at the bottom so you guys can move on to other sections. But for the talking part, let's kind of start that now. I've been flying KISS since I started. When I first started, I was flying KISS V1. I was pretty much copying Mr. Steele's Alien build. I really liked it, and I flew that for almost, I'd say about a year. I took all the electronics and put it on a different frame. At the time I was flying, I don't even know what frame I was flying, but then I eventually took all the KISS components and put it on a Moongoat. Since then, I kind of got tired of all the soldering. I have the drone right here. Here's my favorite drone. Wait, I lied. This isn't it. This is the drone. So this one is KISS V1. We have individual ESCs. We have a PDB. We have a KISS V1 stack. And I'd say this is my favorite flying drone. It's really smooth. It has no crazy anything. It's so buttery smooth. I've had the same rates and PIDs since I started in this thing, and I love it. Only thing I do not like about it is there's so many solder joints. The single ESCs get hit by props a lot. Just little things like that made it very annoying to work on and a little less reliable. So I eventually, after a year, so I flew it for a whole year, so it doesn't say it's that bad. I just wanted something simpler. I'm at a point where I needed more motivation to go fly, and I wanted my builds to be easier. So flash forward a year, we're flying the Fettec 35 amp all-in-one, which is also KISS, and the only reason I switched, like I said, is simplicity. So meaning I fly DJI for the RX and the video. We have a Vista and we have an all-in-one board. That's it. It's that simple. So this drone is super easy to work on. It's super easy to take apart, and that's why I like it. I wanted it to be easy to be fixed on the field. I wanted to be motivated to work on it, and I didn't want to look at a million wires. So that's what brought us to this stage. My favorite flight characteristics about KISS is the air mode acts differently. So like beta flight, I can get my beta flight quads to feel the same as my KISS quads, as in rates and PIDs. Smooth, they feel really good. The gravity, like when I say gravity, the way it yanks you to the sides feels perfect. But when you bounce off something with a Betaflight quad, or if you try to land on something or you crash and hit a wall, it kind of wigs out and like throws you in spirals or like kind of tosses you to the side. That's not always the case, but I'd say 80% of the time it throws you in some weird way. KISS doesn't do that. If you bounce off something, if you land on something, no, you know, you see Mr. Steele always trying to perch on stuff. That's why KISS is perfect for perching on stuff, for touching stuff, for skids. That's why a lot of people like flying KISS. It's the way it maneuvers. It's not that you can't get a Betaflight quad to fly as smooth. It's just air mode. And everyone in the comments is going to be like, well, you can put air mode on a switch. I don't want to mid-flight hit a switch and then turn it on and off. That's not ideal. That's why I fly KISS. It just works. Some downsides of KISS, I'd say, is it's harder to find info on it. It's not open source. It's not like Betaflight where all these manufacturers are making their own boards using Betaflight. So there's info everywhere. There's not info like that. It's a little harder. And until you get your drone set up, it's not super simple. KISS is keep it super simple. It is once you have it set up. So that drone right here, oh no, not this one. The one back there that I just showed you, my KISS V1, I have the same rates and PIDs that I run on this Fettec all-in-one. Also, this right here, same rates and PIDs. Wait, it gets worse. Or should I say better? This guy right here, same rates and PIDs. They all fly buttery smooth. They all feel really similar, and that kind of just keeps me very locked in all my crafts because they're all so different. Like from this wheelbase to this wheelbase, and they both have the same rates and PIDs and both feel pretty similar. So that's another huge thing I like about KISS is the rates and PIDs are good. Betaflight, I'd say you'd have to do more work a lot of the times. Like you could definitely right off the bat get a good tune, but I'd say more than not, people have problems getting their drone to fly perfectly smooth in all situations, and I've just overall been good with KISS. I know some people are I know you guys are wondering, it's an all-in-one. Everyone's scared of all-in-ones because once you fry one thing in it, the whole thing's gone. And these are kind of pricey, but I've been flying them for maybe 5-6 months and I haven't fried one. I had one drone that I got stuck at a bando up on a roof, and alright, it sounds stupid, but we had no supplies. It was so far up, and the only option was to throw stuff at it or shoot it. So we shot it with a pistol, and I actually shot through the flight controller. I'll see if I can find it. If I can, I'll show you guys a clip of it. But that was the only flight controller I broke, and it was shot with a gun, so that doesn't count. Besides that, I haven't fried anything. I do fly 4S, so keep that in mind. I don't run caps. I fly 4S, and I have clean builds, but I don't know, I haven't fried anything. Overall, it really does good. And I live in Vegas. We have like 115-degree weather like every other day. And we go fly and things are burning hot, never a problem. So, not even my Vistas. My Vistas I keep at max power. I've never fried one. So, these electronics do good. I definitely have faith in all the stuff I fly. Like I said, I've been weaving out all the problems in my drone. I flew the same. Most people have a million drones. Look, these are my drones right here. They're all the same drone, except for like the other platforms, like the little Cinewhoop or the Sicario. But my 5 inches are all the same. The reason I do that is because they all fly the same. And during that time, I was able to weave out the things I didn't like and keep building a stronger quad. It's the same thing Steele did. That's why he's so locked in. His muscle memory looks stupid good. It's because he flies these rigs that all feel the same, and it helps him get his muscle memory locked in. That's what it is. It's your muscle memory, and it's just like feeling. It's stick time. So the more you fly similar rates and PIDs and everything just feels the same, the more locked in you're going to be. You'll be able to do things without even thinking about it. I don't want to rant too much, so let's get into the build. Let's move over here to the workbench. Alright, let's get started. Here's the frame. Pretty cool packaging. That was something I really liked about the Moongoat. Most frames come in a pretty plain bag, so that's pretty cool. Let's see what's in here. We got all the hardware, some straps. I actually don't use these straps just because of where I place my battery. These straps are really cool because they have 2 sides which hook onto, let me grab a drone. They hook on to these spots that pop out there and there, but my battery's so small because I fly 4S and I push it forward, it doesn't work out where that is. If you're flying 6S like a normal person, these would work great, but with my little 4S batteries, it just doesn't work where I like my weight. So I toss these off to the side. We got legs, we got a bottom plate, some more legs. This is the front and back connector. Oh yeah, there's also a top plate. Forgot to film that part. But let me get all this stuff out of the bags, and then we'll start putting her together. It's kind of nice that it's all separately packaged, because then the carbon isn't all scratched up and everything is like brand new when you get it. Alright, so to start off, we're going to want to find these 2 bigger screws. They have like a deeper bevel in it. I don't know what to call it, but it's like a standoff built into it. So we're going to install that into this bottom plate, and you can see one side concave, so of course it goes that way. This is going to be the back of the drone. The front right here is the camera plates. So we're going to want to take this back plate. I like to start by just threading this in. If I can get it with my hand, just like that. And then you of course want it to be pulling to where the nut's on top, so it can't pull it through, because if you did it the other way it would just pull off. we're gonna take 2 legs, or arms, whatever you want to call them. I don't know why I'm calling them legs today, but you know what I'm saying. So we get those on, and then in this parts bag right here, we are gonna find the longer screws, which would be these ones right here. So we're gonna pour those out. We're gonna need a 2.5 and a 2 today. But right now we're using a 2. So we're gonna just line this up. What's actually easier to do is the way I should show you to do it. I'm usually lazy and want to just do it like that, and I'll line it up by hand. If you go like this and then tighten it down with just that middle bolt, just like that, it'll kind of hold itself now. And you can line it all up, and now it kind of holds itself with just the 1 screw. And you could feed this one through. It's a tight fit, which is a good thing because you don't want play inside your arms. You have to actually thread it through like that. And get that through. Get the other side now. Just like that. I wouldn't try to just push it through. You want it to stay tight. You don't want to rip out pieces of carbon and make it a little looser in the arms, because when these are fresh, that's when they're best. After time, all frames will start to get a little loose, and you don't want to do that on purpose. Alright, so same thing in the front. We're going to stick that through like that. The nut side on the top, that way it doesn't just pull through. Get this started. A little bit easier with the tool. I don't know why I wasn't doing it like that to begin with. Alright. Same thing. We're going to toss those in like that. Hold it. Get it torqued down just a little, just so it holds its place. Just like that. Try to line it up. And then, same thing. The 2 screws through it. Alright, so here's the camera cage. These are also beveled as well, so it's nice the way the screws sit. There's 1 bag of smaller screws. We're going to be using those. Well, there's actually 2, but these are like for the motors, so we don't need those, because my motors actually came with screws I'm going to use. So we're going to pour out 4 of these. And then if you look, there's 2 bags of standoffs, 1 with a bunch and 1 with 2. The 2 is going to be for the camera cage, so we're going to pull those out. Drop the screw in the beveled side, and then we can get this in by hand. Get another one, drop it in there by hand, and then we could drop that one in there. Grab our 2 mil. Get that started. Actually, before we get that started, I'm gonna be using my 3D print, so we could take that off really quick. We're gonna take this 3D print and slide it on like that, and then we're gonna toss that on. No, we're gonna have to put the GoPro on the top as well. So the top screws I'm not really gonna torque down. I'm just gonna lightly just put them in so they don't fall out. Because we'll be taking that back off to get the GoPro mount on. But for now, we don't want the GoPro mount in our way. So just to get a visual, that goes like that. Next step, we could put the standoffs on, but I kind of like them out of the way sometimes. It just depends what I'm doing. Here, we can clean up all of this. So now we're gonna mount the motors. I'm gonna go with like a pink and a gray, and then a pink and a gray. So to start off, do I like that side? Yeah, I like that. So to start off, we're gonna open up Slat T-motor, and it comes with a little bag of screws. I think they're like 6 mils and 10 mils, it looks like, or 8 mils, probably 8 mils, 6 mils and 8 mils. But we want the 6 mil out of them. So now, let me grab those really quick. The 6 to 8 looks pretty close. I'm just gonna pour them all out, it'll be easier. So we want these 4 and that. Alright, so the skids I made have one hole that a screw goes through, and then the other one, the cap just sits in the middle of it and it doesn't actually hold it. The reason I do that is you don't want the skid in between all your screws, because then when you break the skid off, the motor becomes loose and then it goes boo boo and falls off while you're flying. I've had that happen way too many times to ever want to put 4 screws through it. We're gonna take this motor, put it here. We're gonna set this skid here, put the screw through it. And try to get a thread to catch. Like that. And then go like this. Again, get a thread to catch. And then it's gonna pull this cap head into the plastic, which is what we want. We want this cap head to be secured to the carbon so that this motor has 2 solid screws holding it. And the other 2 screws we're gonna put in are gonna be like 10 mils, and they're gonna actually hold the plastic on. That way, if those ever break, the motor's still good and doesn't fall off. But for now, we'll just keep these 2 screws in, and at the end we'll come back and toss in 10 mils in all 4 of them. So let's move on to the next one. We're gonna go with this gray one here. Trying to hold too much. Alright, so get that in there. Get a thread started like that. Grab the other 6 mil. Wow, that looks nice. The colors go good. I like how this one's somewhat a little shiny, but it's flat, and then this one's the same way, but they're complete opposite colors. I think it goes really good. And then the white wire just tops it off. See what I mean? How they sunk all the way in? It's pretty much not going in the plastic. The plastic just sits around it, which holds it on nice. And then if you want to, which you should, because I always run 4 screws now, I toss on 2 more, and those are 10 mils, and it holds it on. But for now, we're gonna move on like this. Alright, so now that we got these beautiful motors installed, they look so good. I love the mismatch color. We're gonna move on to getting the all-in-one board installed. So we're gonna be using 14 mil screws at the bottom. It's always nice to have one of these kits like this, just so you have everything on hand when you need it, because you never know how tall you need it, and it's definitely nice to not need to run to the store. So definitely recommend this. Fettec comes with these little white or clear spacers, and then the wiring. So we're gonna be using that, and then the 14 mil screws. So I'm gonna switch you guys to the tripod. Alright, so time to get the all-in-one in. The way I like to do it is in this orientation like this. I listen to it, so there's a little white arrow right there. It's really small, but that's the front. So we're gonna stick it that way. I like it this way because the wires get like a straight shot like that, and it's pretty simple to set up. So before we do any wiring, let's get these 14 mil screws through the bottom. You don't have to use any certain type. I just have that kit, so that's why I'm using this type. Looking in the little bag that Fettec sends with the AIO, it comes with one of these smaller wires, which we're going to use. It's a 4-pin. Yeah, 4-pin. And then there's a bigger one. I'm not going to count it, but like an 8-pin or something. And then a bunch of these little spacers. So now, one thing I want to say is here, I'm going to focus this up close and talk about this for a second. One thing I want to say about these boards are, because they're so small and everything's so close, if you look at these little caps, see how close they are to where the screw needs to come in? If you don't use these spacers, your nut or whatever you're tightening it with is going to be, if you have like little spacers that are thicker, it's going to be really close to these caps and it could knock them off very easy. So I definitely recommend using these little white spacers that they send with it, because if you look, they'll fill the gap, and then that way nothing comes near the caps. Also, you don't want to torque them down too much because they're plastic, so as you tighten them down, they will start to squeeze and get wider, and they'll push off the caps as well. So be very careful with that if you use these. These are very strong, but they're very small solders, and especially if you don't use the clips, like I used to use all the pads in here, it's pretty tedious. So make sure if you do, you know what you're doing, and definitely use enough heat and be just quick and out. Get a smaller tip if you need to. But let's get this on there. So here's that little arrow I was talking about. We want it facing this way. We'll start by pushing these through. Like that. And like that. The plastic will kind of hold it on as long as you're gentle, so you can kind of work it. It's not as hard as it looks. So now that I got those 4 on, we will take the all-in-one. Arrow still to the front. And if you look inside the flight controller, see those little tabs? That's if you wanted to use a M2, but we're using M3s, so we're gonna just take something that could punch it out. I like using something like this tool, and right here. So we want to just take like a 2mm, and you can put the 2mm in there, and then just spin it around and push through, and that does it really nicely, because this outer one fits perfect, and that kind of eats it out and then goes to that. So that's a pretty safe way to do it. Put it in there, spin it, push through, boom, M3, and just repeat that on all 4. Just like that. Alright, so now we put the arrow to the front. Let me get you guys in focus down here. And we're going to line all these up. Just like that. Goes on pretty easy. And then we're left with 4 more little spacers. We're going to toss those on. Just like that. And then back to the kit. My kit's nuts went all over the place, but there's some in here. Boom. 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 Okay. So now we're not going to torque anything down yet. We're just going to get these tightened up by hand, just so the screws don't go flying around and all the spacers and stuff. Let's start by doing the back side first. We'll get all the front ones out the way. We're going to be working on this side first. So I like to flatten out the wires. I run props out, so that means the props are going like this. So I like to put the standoff is going to be right here. I like the stuff behind the standoff. So if you want to be even safer, you could run it on the side like that. But aesthetically it doesn't look good. I like it to look good as well. So I run it on top and just toss like 2 zip ties right here. And that way if the prop comes down, it hits the zip tie, and then I just check my drone every time I pick it up. And if a zip tie breaks, I'll just toss a new one on. So I'll go like this, get it nice and taut. Not too taut, but we don't need too much extra. So I'd go something like that. And then give yourself a little bit of slack, like that. Cut them all even. Here's on the bottom. It's not truly centered. I have it more towards the back than the front. But in the carbon up here, it's centered. The holes aren't centered. So if you're listening to me and you center it and you're like, why does his look different? It's more centered up here. I could fit a thumb on both sides. So let's move over to this side. Same thing. Get it nice and straight. Leave yourself a little bit extra slack. Not too much. Something like that. We'll cut it. And then move on to the front side. Alright, so time to tin the wires. I got them all trimmed up. Just want to go through, get some fresh solder on there. I'm being risky doing it right over the stack, but that's how you become good at it. Not really. I wouldn't do this. If you were smart, you definitely would have tinned it without the stack below it. But at my job, I solder drums 24/7, so I have a pretty good eye on when it's gonna drip and when I need to clean off my tip. Alright, cool. So we got those all tinned up. I also should have tinned the stack, so I'm gonna do that now. This would also be smart to do before you mount it in the frame. And this side. So to anyone who really struggles with soldering, tinning is your trick. Like even when the wire seems like it's not doing what you want it to do and you're like panicking, sometimes adding more solder actually helps. It will help everything reflow to where it's going, because there's flux in it, so it kind of yanks it around and makes it better. So we got everything tinned up. Now I'm gonna take a pair of these tweezers. So I like to have a little thing on solder like this. That way I can keep it kind of next to me. I'll clean off my tip, get a little bit of fresh solder, and then knock this one out. Just like that. I do a little bit of an angle. You don't need nothing too crucial. Get another one. Clean the tip off. Fresh solder, just a little bit. Boom, just like that. And then now when I zip tie it, it'll kind of sit like that, and I can push down like this just a little bit, and it gets rid of all that nastiness. So that should be pretty good. Switch over to this side, clean the tip off, get a little bit of fresh solder. Just like that. Don't mind the angle I'm coming at it with. I'm trying to go around the camera. Definitely makes it a little harder. Cool. Same thing, I kind of just push the tweezer here. Not too hard, you don't want to cut the wires or nothing. But just enough that you can get rid of a little bit of that slack. Just like that. Actually fix this middle one. I'm a little OCD sometimes. Cool. I'm just going to toss on some zip ties, just to kind of hold everything where I want it. Meaning it's props out, I like to put the zip tie here. That way if it's coming at if it's going to hit where my wire's at, hopefully it hits the zip tie first, which it usually does from this angle, just like that. So that's why I like the ugly tab up. That's my little wire guard. Same thing on this side. Nice and clean. Just like that. Cool. And don't mind up here, we still have to put the standoffs in, so I'm not going to worry too much because we have to hold it out like that to get the standoff in. So let's switch to this side now. A little bit too much solder right there. If you see, they keep wanting to jump. So I'm happy that problem I actually just showed you guys. Some people panic when they're in that moment, so I just kind of wiped it off and retried. Cleaned this one up, and now they're good. Don't panic if things ever jump together. So that's where I was kind of talking about sometimes adding a little more solder to help get it all to jump to each individual pad helps. But I was able to just touch it a couple times and cleaned it up. Alright, so now that we got all the motor wires soldered up, we're going to move on to the XT60. XT60s usually come with like a 12 gauge, which is huge, especially for these little pads. Here, let me show you guys a little closer. If you look closely, those pads are tiny, and then there's a little cap there. So we're going to actually use this 15 gauge. Typically I would use black, but I'm out of black, so we're going to be stuck with red, which sucks. But the way we're going to do it is, we don't have to measure anything yet. I just kind of got a rough estimate. It's about 5 inches maybe. I like to run my wires in. So I'm going to tin these up. I run them in, and then they do like a little twist like this and come right around right there. And then we'll cut the top at the end. So I always touch a little bit of solder to the tip, get it started, then I drift the solder to the back side of the wire so it actually feeds through. You don't want to just put solder on the top of the wire. You want to pull it through it. But when you're using like a little cheap soldering iron like this, a TS100, which they kick ass, don't get me wrong, but like compared to the one I use at work, you need to do a little extra. So I always touch it first, start by kind of touching it on the wire, and then work my way around to where now I'm not touching the soldering iron, I'm touching the wire, and it melted in. So then from there, we could get you focused down there. Okay, so from here, tin it a little bit, get it nice and heated up. You don't want to push hard. I kind of just move around a little bit so it heats everything up. You see when everything turns to a bubble. And like that, that's pretty good. I'm actually gonna add a little bit more. Do a little fresh solder on the tip. I just want a little bit of a better bubble. Like that. Nice. Alright, so now time for number 2. This is where it gets a little scary. You don't want to squeeze it down so much that it touches everything. You want to make sure the pre-tin you have on here isn't too much as well. So I'm gonna kind of clean it off a little bit. Like that. Alright, so add a little pre-tin. Warm up the pad. Just like that. We could do a little bit more tweezers. Beautiful. That is beautiful. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera. But I like to run it just like that, and then we'll end up cutting it like somewhere right here, but we'll leave it long for right now. Remember I was saying I run a positive and negative for my GoPro? Well, I was so focused on soldering these I forgot to add those. So risky business. I have to hop back into these solders that are perfect and not touching anything, and this is when problems happen. But I signed up for the mistakes I just made, so I'm gonna use this extra wire I have right here. I like how small the gauge is. It should be pretty easy to just sink in there. So I'm just gonna steal 2 wires. It doesn't matter which ones. As you see, they sent 2 of these, so I only need 1. I should also start by turning this thing on. Boom. I've had this thing for like 2 years and it's been kicking ass. I dropped it recently and it kind of did that, but it's not like really falling apart or anything. It's doing pretty good, so shout out TS100s. And boom, these 2 wires are gonna run up here and connect to whatever GoPro I'm doing. If I'm doing my GoPro 10, I run a little, like, this one's huge, but like a 5-volt regulator. And then I have one of these right here. So I'd pretty much put that 5-volt in line in this wire and then connect that to this, and this will go right to the USB. Which I think someone told me on the new GoPro update, you can't do that. But none of my GoPros are updated, so I'm good. So I'm sorry if you're not able to do that. Maybe you should run GoPro Bones, which has a built-in Beck. And then these wires would pretty much just connect to this. I would just connect this wire to that. So whatever route I'm going, either way I knew I needed wires, so you want to do it now, just so you have them. AIO 35 amp pin out. Search that. I just pulled it up on my phone. Right now what we're working on is, this is the way this is sitting right here. If we look at the drone we're working on, it's flipped this way. So it's rolled over. But looking at it like this, we're gonna want the full battery power coming out right there, the VCC, and then we want 1 ground. It doesn't matter which one, but we'll pick the outside 2. And then we want the RX3 and TX3. So we pretty much just want the 2 outsides on both sides of the wiring. So we don't need the rest of the wires. The rest is for other stuff. I don't trust my GoPro going through any of this, even though the 16 volts probably would have did it, but still I don't trust it. Video, we don't need all that, so because we're not using OSD through the flight controller or anything. Like I said, we need the 2s on both sides. So I would start by separating those two. Separating these two, if I can get it. Just like that. And then take a pair of tweezers and just lift up the plastic retainers for these other ones we're not using. There we go. So we got 2 and 2. So we could pretty much install this into this now. Yeah, it is a little more confusing because everything is black wires, but it's not too bad. So we're looking at it on this picture as if the drone's like this. So I know it's hard to see because they're black wires, so I'll kind of put the white screen there. So these are the top 2. Let me get these out the way. This is the way we're looking at it. Full battery power, ground, and then TX, and then RX. Looking at it like that. A lot of you guys are going to be running Crossfire or something else. I run the DJI controller. So for me, all I need is the signal and then the ground. You guys are going to need a 5 volt as well, and then telemetry if you want. But so I'm going to just keep the outside too. So that's the one I cut, so not that one. So this one, I'll just separate the middle. Use these again. There we go. Just like that. Cool. So now at this point, there's 2, make sure you check your pin out. There's a top and a bottom. The top is the receiver tab. The bottom's other ports. So now that we got all these wires, don't be scared. I know we got a bunch of black wires. Every time we solder something, we're going to just follow it back to where it goes, and we'll look at the diagram. So at first it seems a little scary, but it looks a lot cleaner, especially once I get this blacked out. It definitely cleans up your builds. But so far, it's looking pretty good. Alright, so looking over our wiring, just to say it one more time, this is going to be full battery power. This is going to be ground. The one on the inside is going to be TX, and then the outside is RX. And then this side, let me double check. Looking at it in the diagram, this way, bottom one is going to be ground, and the top one will be my signal. And like I said, if you're running Crossfire, you'll have some more, so don't just unpin stuff if you're not using the same setup. And if you do unpin it, you're not cutting it, so you could always bend the plastic back and re-pop it in. So I guess it wouldn't be the end of the world. But this is where we are. Dude, these look so good. I'm liking it so far. So now it's time to get the Vista in there. I like the old school Vista with this camera. I just like it for the mounting points. The camera's supposedly a little better, but that's not really why I like it. I like that it has 4 bolts because I have less problems with 4 bolts. Here's a little arrow. It goes this way. So now in the back, I use these little M2 screws. Here we go. So those, they're little, they're tiny, and then I have these little plastic nylon nuts. So I like to do this corner because this is where the little antenna is, and it helps tighten down on the antenna. That way that never comes loose. So it doesn't really matter how you do this, if you use plastic or metal. I just use the plastic ones I have on the bottom because these plastic ones are a little taller. That way I could run my wires below the Vista without it being dirty. Where the heck? These M2 bolts I cut. M2s are very tiny, so you could bend them back and forth and break them, but the first thread always sucks then. But trust me, they will work. There we go. So we got one of the plastic ones in, threaded all the way down. This one's more just going to be a spacer below the Vista, which is going to allow me to run my wires below it and just keep everything nice and clean. So we don't want to tighten it all the way yet because we don't know the fitment, but just a little bit. If you are lazy like me or cheap like me and just break M2s to make them smaller, make sure you keep a nut on it when you do that. That way when you unthread it, it kind of rethreads itself. Definitely helps. But because they're so small, they're pretty easy to just snap and get the threads to rework. So I get that like that, and then space them right. Get it spaced right, like that. I like to run it all the way forward. If you see, it's all the way forward like that. The reason I do that is because that back standoff's right there. It gives more room for the antenna, so it's not just bunched into something. And there's so much room here, there's no reason not to. It gets my weight forward. I like it. So we move it forward like that. We're gonna still have to run the wires below, and we don't know the order yet, or I'd just pull all the wires down below. Like if I had different color wires, if you did this and you had red, black, yellow, and white, you could know the order and pull them underneath, re-bolt this, or already bolt this and be ready to go. But because we're using all black, we don't want to bolt this down yet. We want to be able to move it out the way, just so we could verify wires as we go. So we'll leave that loose. Where the heck? Here they are. I was like, I knew I had some metal nuts right there. So we're gonna leave those off to the side. That's for the Vista. I also don't like when the camera's dangling around like this. So there's tons of things you could do. You got a little tape there. I like to add the camera cage, because when I add the camera cage, I could then put this here and I add one nut right in there and it holds this on there, and this just chills like that. But you do it to the back one. But so let's get this guy on. I'm sure you guys know how to do a Vista, but there's a little arrow, it points up that way, so it sits like this. So we're gonna sit it like that, get this the right way, just like that. Alright, so I just got the camera all bolted up. It's still loose, as you can see. I can move it, but it's enough that things won't fall out. As you see, I like to build things loose, as long as it's something I can get back to easily and there's not going to be other stuff in the way. That way I could go back and easily get to things and adjust as I go, because right now I don't even know the camera angle I want until I see it kind of as a whole. So for now it's just like this so we don't break nothing. Kind of like what I was saying, the whole reason we even put it in the cage already is because right now when I'm working on the Vista, I don't want the camera just flopping around. So I like to put this over here like that. But I kind of add the Vista on there like that. That way as I'm going like this, it's not really yanking on the cable too bad. It is a little bit, but nothing crazy. They could handle a decent amount of use. I just wouldn't want it hanging by it. Right now it's hanging on this bolt. You know, it can only tip as far as the carbon touches. So that's pretty safe if you're working on a drone like this. I definitely recommend doing something like that. Alright, so I know I've been saying we were going to run the power from this clip, but I rethought about it, and I really don't trust power from flight controllers. So we're going to actually remove the power and just keep the ground from it. So it's the very first one was supposed to be the power. We're going to remove it. Alright, so to kind of just go over what we did, this top one's going to be ground. I showed you there was a power and a ground that were running to the VTX from the flight controller, but to be honest, I really don't like running power from the flight controller. We're going to give it straight right off the battery. So we're going to add another power wire right off this. But for now, this is the ground, and then RX, and then TX, and then this side, one of them, the top one right here is signal, and this bottom one is ground, and then the other two are just the ones that we're running to the GoPro. I know it looks like a mess, but if you were wiring it, you'd know what you're looking at, because I'm not too lost. That's that way, that's that way, those are going that way. So we're going to add one more coming off the power and run a power and ground to the Vista. So we're going to do that right now. Here's the one I just unpinned. So just like that. Cool. So now this is our new positive instead of using it off the harness. I just don't like doing it that way. So we'll run this down below here and under the Vista. And then this top one will be our ground. So we'll run that like that. So if I kind of get up a little closer, we're going to run those below the Vista like that. And then the Vista will chill kind of on top of it like that. And these will run straight to the back. One trick I do sometimes if all the wires are black is I'll like tie a knot in one of them, or just do something different. So the one with the knot's my ground. So just to get these two done, we're gonna first flip this Vista upside down. So we got this Vista upside down. We want it like that. To be honest, it'll be easier with this camera in my face to do it like this. Fine, we'll do it like that. So we just want to tin everything. Cool. There, so you guys could see the wires. Like that. And then this one we're going to trim about there. Looks pretty good. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but there's nothing too crazy going on. If I lift the camera back up and show you guys. So next is the RX and TX. We look at our diagram, TX is on the inside, RX is on the outside. So I got the TX in my hand. We're gonna run that over here first. Up in the front, I like to tuck this stuff around the things like that. Just keep it out the way. So, keeps it pretty clean. Alright guys, sorry my camera died, but pretty much we got the positive, the negative, the RX, which actually was the TX on the flight controller, and then now the TX on the Vista, which is the RX on here, which is the outside one. So we got it right here. Perfect. Okay. Now, I already prepared these and I made the ground had the knot. So we're going to pull these both under here. Just like that. And then we could run them all the way back. Cool. Perfect. So we got all those soldered up. They're nicely out of the way. Nothing can hit it. So now we'll get the screws in the top just so it doesn't come falling off. Alright, so this is what we're kind of looking at so far. These two wires are going to go to the GoPro. And everything else is wired. It just needs to be programmed. Besides the XT60 leads, we still need to do those. I'm gonna get rid of this ugly red. But as for the wiring goes, that's it. And it kind of looks messy, but I just like to tangle it up like that because it keeps it from going anywhere. Like look, it can only move there and there. That way we don't have to worry about anything getting chopped. Now I could toss this up here like that. And we can toss some standoffs on. At this point, we could toss some standoffs on, get this top plate on, maybe with a bolt just to hold this front camera on, and we can start flashing stuff. I could tighten this down too, I haven't yet. The only reason I haven't is because you don't want to do the back one until you get that antenna in, because if you tighten that bolt, it tightens the whole thing, and that will tighten that too. So we're going to get the antenna on, all the standoffs. Top plate we'll just put like 2 screws on just to hold it together. I'll size up the XT60 and then we'll flash it and we're pretty much done. So as you see, that's why I like the all-in-one. It's very simple. Especially now that we have it all wired, it's 2 plugs. So say something breaks on this, I remove the 2 plugs, I put a new XT60 on it, and I solder the 12 wires. And besides that, that's it. So it's very simple. I just finger tightened all the standoffs. Now I'll kind of hang that on a standoff and just finish tightening up. Oh wait, I said I didn't want to do that till I got this back antenna on. So we'll toss this on, grab this last standoff, get that screwed in, and then this Vista kit came with this antenna. I'm not a fan of this one. I like the old school one, so I got one of those. The only thing about these is there's this tall plastic and it's gonna be in my way, so I like to just kind of cut up it. If you slowly just work your way up like this, I probably need it cut to about there. So now it's nice and short. Look at that. There we go. So we'll slide this down. And then we got to open this up. anyone lazy like me and use snips as a wrench sometimes. Alright, so that's how I typically do it. I do like one little, roll right there just so it stays inside the frame and doesn't touch anything or hook onto anything, and it's not like under anything for interference, so it's kind of a good spot. It kind of goes a little too far to get this hook in, so you kind of got to pull it out a little bit, get it hooked on phonics, and then get it back under there. Okay. Alright, so off camera I just tightened these 2 bolts. I only run 2 out of the 4. I never really seem to have a problem. I don't really Loctite it, but I'll take some electrical tape. You know the electrical tape with the paintbrush? I'll paint that on just the very top. It makes like a little rubbery grip on the threads, and it can't really unthread itself. Maybe it'll come loose, but it can't unthread itself. I like that because it's not so permanent. It comes off in a peel, but it also holds things on. I'll do the same thing to these 4 bolts eventually. But for now, we got all that on. We're going to push this out the side, and we're going to put the stop plate on. Like I said, it's not permanently staying on. I still want to do a couple things on the inside, but this is just so we hold the drone together, and it's kind of nice to see it together. Gives you some motivation to keep going. So we'll just toss in 1 screw right here, if I can get it to go in, like that, and then we'll toss 1 more like right here. Cool. So that's on there tight now. Now we're starting to see the drone. It's looking pretty good. So now we'll take these. I like it to go to about there. So I'll make that to there. And then I'll add this to it, recheck what's positive and negative. I think it's pretty clean looking. I don't know if I like these clear zip ties. I usually use black ones. We might be switching those, but that's little stuff. Little stuff. We could toss this mount on this front piece. This part's a little hard, so the trick is to warm this up and then slide this in. I make it really tight on purpose. Alright, so don't make fun of me. This has been my heat gun since I started flying. My little sister got a new fucking blow dryer, so I stole this from her, and I've had it for like 2 years now. The trick to getting this in is to take a heat gun or a Conair Mini Pro and just warm it up. If you go like that, see, it easily just pops in. Give it a little spin as you do it. Get it to the other side. Same thing, just keep spinning it and get it to go through. This one has a little bit of crud in it, so it's going to be harder. So before I even do that, let me just clean it out. I scratched it right there because I wasn't using a 1.5, but it doesnil matter. It'll still thread perfectly fine. So now we could toss this back up here. Use our 2 mil. She is looking good. We're getting there. So we got left is a positive and negative that are going to run to the lead of the GoPro. We have to put a strap on it and put in these little inserts. I don't use them all. I just use like a couple of the big ones right here. And then from there, it's just props and programming it. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention, I didn't put a cap in here. I know someone's going to talk about how like, without a cap, that thing's not going to fly good or some random stuff. I fly 4S. I've never ran a cap on any of my builds. I never needed to. Or I shouldn't say I never have. I have. But I've ran them both ways, and I always result to going back to none because I've never needed it. I've never seen a difference, and I've never had a problem. I'm talking from 2 years of experience from flying my style. I've never needed one, so that's enough. That's enough proof for me. You could bring all the science to the table you want, but I could tell you my results, and my results are true because I did them myself. So I of course want my builds to be the strongest they could be because I don't want to fix my drone over and over again, and I found a way that works, so I'm gonna stick to it. Alright, so I have major OCD when I'm building drones, and that red wire just doesn't fit. It's killing me. So off camera, I'm gonna take this off. I was just digging in a bin for like 15 minutes and I was able to find some old wire, so I'm gonna replace that real quick. And then see this bundle of wire we did? The reason we did it like that was so when we were working on it we could see. Now we could undo the clip and do that on both sides, and then I'll loosen these 2 screws and just feed this underneath, and then we could plug it right back in. That way it's nice and clean. We don't see all this wire. All we'll see is that wire disappearing right there. And we left plenty of room because we put those spacers. So I'll do that off camera too. I'm pretty much going to loosen up the whole stack. You don't want to take it all the way out because all those washers will fall out, and there's washers below too. So just loosen it as much as you can and then feed this underneath. Same thing on this side. Undo that one. Feed it underneath, plug it back in, and it'll be nice and clean. So I'll flash back when I get that done. Alright, so I was able to switch the wires over to these black ones. Like I said, I did it off camera just to make it easier, but same thing, 2 wires. I didn't have to worry about what's positive and negative yet because we're going to put that on last. So we got those in. There's 1 positive and 1 negative right here that's going to run to my GoPro. I like to run that straight off the XT60 like I said. And then earlier I was talking about running power and ground off this connector right here, but I really don't recommend running it off there. So if you see, I only have an RX, a TX, and then a ground, which is going to be for the Vista, and then the power is right here. See this 1 wire that tees off this wire? It goes right over here to the power. So we're getting direct power off the XT60. I definitely recommend that. If you're running 6S, you might want to toss a cap in here, or you probably should, but I never have problems on my 4S, so I'm not going to switch anything. We're at the point now where we could tighten the stack down, so I'm going to tighten all these bolts down. You don't want to go too crazy, but just enough that nothing's going to come loose. And then you could toss a dab of something on top, like hot glue or black electrical tape or just anything, like the liquid electrical tape, obviously, just so those can't unthread. But I don't like to tighten them down too much. You don't want to start making the plastic warp. So another good way to remember wires is just tinning one to begin with. So I only tinned the negative, or I didn't tin it, but I only stripped this one. So I'll do the negative first, that way I can keep them separated. So let's tin it. And then it says in, it's hard to see where I got this, but there's in and out. So this is going to be in because we got the power coming in from the battery. So we're going to go, let me read this. So we're going to go in and negative. Just like that. And then we'll strip the positive. We will tin it. Sometimes you could bring the object to the wire. For little stuff like this, it usually works out pretty good. So, and then I'll probably double-side sticky tape this somewhere like right in there. Like I'll drop it down in there. But until we get those other wires on it, I'm going to keep it out. Then we'll heat shrink this up. Alright, cool. So now we could just tuck this down under these wires. kind of like that. That little bit of extra wire that I was trying to hide in the heat shrink, but it was a little too short to do that, so we'll just hide it down here. Alright, so my dumbass forgot to pay attention to which wire is each, but I could easily find out with a multimeter. So we'll do that at the end. That'll also give me a chance to show some of you guys that don't know how to do things like that, how to use a multimeter in that situation, because it's definitely a useful thing to know how to do. There's gonna be a time you need to know how to use a multimeter. I'm no pro, but I could do small diagnostics. But to start, we're gonna just pull those through because we want to just get this frame shut for now. We shouldn't need to come back in here anytime soon. I run the wires kind of close to where this carbon comes in, so just be careful that you don't pinch anything. I always try to just move everything out the way and make sure it's not gonna destroy any of my wires, but it seems pretty good. Then we go like that, and like that. So now when I strap it down, I keep this behind that, and it keeps my cables safe from props at all times. So it kind of sits like that. It's small, lightweight, and then it looks good. No more ugly red. So pretty much we have props, flash it, heat shrink this tip right here. I like to heat shrink it. It definitely helps. It sounds stupid, but putting some clear heat shrink on this takes a beating. It really does. And then the rest of the screws, but we're gonna wait on those. And this little 5-volt thing for the GoPro. We already put the 5-volt, so we just have to attach this. So that's super simple. We have to just multimeter it and make sure what's positive and what's negative, because I forgot to label it. But we'll get to that. Alright, so this is where we're sitting now. We're pretty far along. We haven't done any of the top screws on the plate. We haven't tightened anything on the frame. And all the motors are missing 2 screws. They're like 10 mils that's gonna hold on the little skids. But we're gonna move on to flashing. Oh yeah. And we have the wires in here that need to go to the USB that's gonna power the GoPro. But before we do that, we're gonna move on to the computer right here and get some flashing in. I'm gonna show you guys the dump I use that has all my settings, and I'm also gonna leave that down in the description so you guys could actually download my dump and see it all firsthand. So you don't even need to copy what I do. You could just pretty much steal that whole file. So let's move on to the computer and we'll get it flashed. Alright, so I just wanted to show you guys firsthand. I got it plugged in, no battery in. We're gonna take the battery, give it battery power. We'll press this button over here, and that's gonna put it in binding mode for the RX. At that point, we're gonna turn on the DJI controller. Now, I don't even remember the buttons, but it's like this. It's the record button, this roller, and this button right here all at the same time. So now it's in binding mode. Now on the drone side, press that, it's bound. So that's it. Now we're bound up. So now if you bind it up right here and you're trying to mess it around and you're like, what the heck, it's not working on the screen. What the problem is this Vista wasn't set up to fast S-Bus, and that's what's set up on our GUI. So it's just a different protocol. All that we need to do is put our goggles on, and in that menu, I'll show you guys how to do it. So let me get my goggles real quick. Alright, open up the menu. And then we're gonna scroll to settings, and at the bottom of the settings it says device, and then for protocol, see if you guys can see right there, it says protocol, it says normal. We're going to click on that, and it's going to ask you if you want to change it to fast S-Bus. It says it's recommended, blah blah blah. We click OK, click on protocol again, change it to S-Bus fast. So now it says S-Bus fast. So now at this point we should be good to go. So we can unplug the goggles, move on back to the controller. It just showed up green right here. We move around and we got movement. So throttle's throttle, make sure yaw is yaw, roll, roll. Alright, so KISS FC pass through, COM25 connect. It's a little glitchy, so it might take you a couple times, but you need battery power and then just the USB in. See right here, it's not working. There it goes. There, it worked. Cool. So we're in now. Now, if we remember the order, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we come up to number 1 on the motors, we're going to take this off my lap and put it somewhere safe where it's not going to hit wires or anything. We're going to come over to where it says it's a testing spot somewhere. Right here. So in the telemetry page, we can make motor 1 spin. We need to click set throttle, okay. So we spin it. I'll show you guys. Number 1 spinning, so that's right. And it's spinning props out, which is also right. So now we'll move on to number 2. Click set throttle, click it, it's spinning props out. Move that out the way. So it's spinning props out and it's number 2, so that's also correct. Then we'll come down to 3, set throttle. That's the one I'm holding, so I should move my hand. Give it. So that's 3. It's props out, so this one's correct as well. Dang, 3 for 3. And then set throttle, number 4. And that one's correct, so they're all correct. We don't have to do anything, so that's perfect. We're gonna leave that the way it is. As you guys could see, we could reverse them if we needed to. We could change slow starts, all that type of stuff, but we're not gonna mess with any of this. I like it the way it is, so we're gonna disconnect that. If you look at it like this, this is going to be our first piece, so you kind of just rip it out. So piece by piece, I'll grab a piece, rip it out, and then stick it on. And then I'm going to skip the little pieces, go to the next big piece. Again, rip it out. Perfect. So we got those 4 on, and that's all I need. So I get this strap on, like that. I tuck that in there, and there we go. She's a beauty. Want to know what the next step is? Time to fly it!
Couldn't you put us up somewhere for the night?
Why, as soon as they take Mr. Harrison's body out, you could have his room. Well, I'm retiring. Good night.
Nice. Pleasant dreams.
Mean pleasant nightmares, don't you?
Well,